Let's go again.
Because it's not optional to understand this. It's absolutely crucial to understand this.
Hello friends, welcome to Look and Live. You are now here with Pastor James Devalon, and this is another reaction video. As you guys have noticed lately, I have been reacting to another amazing, exceptional individual on this channel. His name is Jordan Peterson. For a number of reasons, a scholar, philosopher, however you want to refer to him as, but amazingly intelligent. And it makes a lot of sense on many things. I am not saying he's infallible. I am not saying he's sinless. I am simply saying you can learn something from this man. By the way, I just want to publicly acknowledge my friend here, my friend JP. Thank you for this email that you sent me to react to Peterson's newest release. And that's exactly what we're going to do right now, after we take this quick commercial break. So thank you, JP, for this. I appreciate that. It's been added to the list. It was only a matter of time before I got to it. So here we are. Brace yourself as we dive into the heart of the message. Okay friends, welcome back. If you are new to the channel, like and subscribe to the page, click the bell icon to be notified for my upcoming video. Brace yourself friends, we are gonna go deep today. I'm gonna try to listen attentively, pause not so often, only if I feel the need to. This is about 11 minutes video, so guess what guys, let's get to the heart of the message today.
You need to understand postmodernism because that's what you're up against, and you're up against it far more than you know or think. And it's a much more well-developed and pervasive, pernicious, nihilistic, intellectually attractive doctrine than has yet come to public realization. It absolutely dominates the humanities and increasingly the social sciences in the universities. And what's happening, you see, someone once said, who unfortunately I can't remember, it might have been Friedrich Nietzsche, said that everybody is the unconscious exponent of a dead philosopher. And fortunately, the postmodern philosophers, most of them are dead, so that's a good thing. But that doesn't mean that their words aren't continually being spoken by people who are following in their wake, let's say. And it's not like any given person is absolutely possessed, say, by the spirit of postmodernism, because often they're not educated enough to know all the details about what it is that has them in their grip. But if you get 20 of them together and they're all 5% influenced by the postmodernist ethos, you basically have the spirit of the mob that's a mouthpiece for that particular philosophical doctrine. And if you understand the doctrine, then you understand why things are progressing the way that they're progressing. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the doctrine.
All right, this is talking about postmodernism, guys. And I had mentioned this before. I spoke about that because I had studied what postmodernism has done. Especially when I'm studying theology, and I have discovered so many things that this thing has done and how it came about. I'm not gonna go ahead of him right now. I'm going to allow him to speak, but you need to really understand the influence and the spirit of postmodernism and how it has been intertwined in just every sector of our lives, of political government, even in the church. It is a serious thing. Most of the confusions that you hear regarding the Bible are the results of postmodernism. So now, I'm going to allow Stevenson to go on and tell us some more about this.
Because it's not optional to understand this. It's absolutely crucial to understand.
Stevenson. All right. Let's go again.
Because it's not optional to understand this. It's absolutely crucial to understand this. You can't underestimate the power of ideas and also the power of words, of course, because ideas are expressed in words. But you see, the postmodernists completely reject the structure of Western civilization. And I mean completely. So I can give you an example in one term. Jacques Derrida, who's head trickster for the postmodernist movement, regarded Western culture, let's call it the patriarchy, as phallogocentric. Okay, so phallo comes from phallus, P-H-A-L-L-O. And so that's the insistence that what you see in Western culture is the consequence of a male-dominated, oppressive self-serving society. And we might say, well, societies do tend to be self-serving and people in power do tend to act in their best interests, but a tendency is not an absolute, and that's one of the things that needs to be considered continually. There are no shortage of flaws in the manner in which we've structured our society. And compared to any hypothetical utopia, it's an absolutely dismal wreck. But compared to the rest of the world and the plight of other societies throughout the history of mankind, we're doing pretty damn well, and we should be happy to be living in the society that we're living in. So the first thing that you might want to note about postmodernism is that it doesn't have a shred of gratitude. And there's something pathologically wrong with a person who doesn't have any gratitude, especially when they live in what so far is the best of all possible worlds. And so if you're not grateful, you're driven by resentment. And resentment is about the worst emotion that you can possibly experience apart from arrogance. Resentment, arrogance, and deceit. There's an evil triad for you. And if you're bitter about everything that's happening around you, despite the fact that you're bathed in wealth, then there's something absolutely wrong with you. The Black community in the United States is the 18th wealthiest nation on the planet. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't such a thing as relative poverty, and relative poverty matters. It's an important political economic issue, and it's very, very difficult to deal with. But absolute wealth matters too, and Western societies have been absolutely remarkable in their ability to generate and distribute wealth, as you can tell by just looking around and taking a brief bit of consideration for the absolute miracle that even a building like this represents. So you have to educate yourself about postmodernism. Okay, so here's what the postmodernists believe. They don't believe in the individual. That's the logos part. Western culture is logocentric. Logo is logos. That's partly the Christian word, but it's also partly the root word of logic, okay? They don't believe in logic. They believe that logic is part of the process by which the patriarchal institutions of the West continue to dominate and to justify their dominance. They don't believe in dialogue. The root word of dialogue is logos again. They don't believe that people of goodwill can come to consensus through the exchange of ideas. They believe that notion is part of the philosophical substructure and practices of the dominant culture. So the reason they don't let people who they don't agree with speak on campus is because they don't agree with letting people speak.
Wow. But do you also see how this is vitally connected to attack that we have seen on freedom of speech lately, right? That's the spirit of postmodernism, by the way. If you want to understand how that came about, you kind of have to dig into the fabric of postmodernism and how it was from what it was birthed. Postmodernism is kind of like the child of secular humanism and also Roman Catholic theology. When you actually go dig into the Dark Ages and you find out what Catholicism was doing. What Catholicism was doing, it literally was implying the spirit of communism, communist propaganda theory, where they will control just about every sector of communication. They will control the press, and they will oppress anyone who dares to speak, and they will use their false doctrines in the name of a Christian church, which is not Christian at all. But they will use that as a means of controlling the mind of the masses. What this gave birth to what is known in history as the Protestant Reformation. Men like John Calvin, John Wycliffe, Martin Luther. These men came about to say, we want to allow people to think for themselves. We want to give the Bible in the language of the people. Latimer, Ritmer, and also so many others, right? So these men, their purpose was to undo the spirit of Catholicism. So what the spirit of Catholicism did back then, and if you want to understand this, I've recommended a book before. I'll put it on the screen for you. You need to read The Great Controversy to understand where postmodernism, how it has come to the world and the impact that it's having. So the spirit of Catholicism is this idea of literally is the same theory of globalism, total control from top down. It is the spirit of hierarchy where the church and the state are in perfect union, and they are controlling and dictating to the masses not only how to run things or their business, even the money, and they will also control their belief system, even the mind. It is a very dangerous thing. And this is why the Protestant Reformation was birthed, I believe, by God, to push back against this notion of Catholicism. But here is the thing. As the spirit of Catholicism was manifesting itself in the 6th century, we're talking about from 538 BC, it moved all the way to 1798. A little bit after 1798, we had what is known as the French Revolution. What was happening within the French Revolution, it was like a public reaction of the oppression of Catholicism. So what was happening then, the bloodshed that took place, it was just the end result of the people being fed up, being oppressed from Catholic teaching theology, which was such a bad thing. So the people reacted, but in their reaction during the French Revolution, they overreacted. So they overreacted so far to the left. They were pushing away from Catholicism, in so much so they began to push away from the Bible. Actually, if you read Revelation chapter 10, it explains this a little bit about the two witnesses. When you understand the theory and the symbolism behind that, you can understand how postmodernism was birthed. So what happened is Catholicism gave rise to what is known as the French Revolution. The French Revolution was a pushback against Roman Catholic theory. And the pushback against Roman Catholic theory also led into what is known today as postmodernism, which is like the child of both Catholicism and secular humanism. Merging the two together gives birth to what is known as postmodernism. And postmodernism comes in, it becomes postmodernism is like the mother of atheism, is the mother of communism, is the mother of globalism, is the mother of most of these very strange spirit and doctrines and philosophies that we see in our world today. It is the spirit of postmodernism that says, if you say something, you need to be censored. You need to be canceled. It's the spirit of postmodernism that says capitalism is not good enough. We need a globalism, a one world economy, or the Great Reset theory, economic forum kind of concept. All of that is actually the manifestation of postmodernism. But to understand how it was birthed, you need to look at the mother and the father, which is secular humanism and also Roman Catholic theology, Catholicism as well. Anyway, let him do some more talking here.
You see, it's not part of the ethos. Okay, so what else do they believe and not believe? They believe that since you don't have an individual identity, your fundamental identity is group fostered. And that means that you're basically an exemplar of your race, hence white privilege, or you're an exemplar of your gender or your sex or your ethnicity, or you're an exemplar of however you can be classified so that you are placed in the position of victim against the oppressor.
Wow. Because
that's the game. And it's a post-Marxist sleight of hand, right? The old Marxist notion was that the world was a battleground between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, and that failed to have any philosophical or ethical standing, that argument, after the working class actually saw its standard of living massively elevated as a consequence of Western corporate democracy. And also as a consequence of the revelations of everything terrible that had happened in every bloody country that ever dared to make equity and the Marxist communist dogma part of their fundamental structure, right? And nothing but murderousness and oppression. And so by the 1970s, it was evident that that game was up. The postmodernist Marxists just basically pulled a sleight of hand and said, okay, if it's not the poor against the rich, it's the oppressed against the oppressor. We'll just redivide the subpopulations in ways that make our bloody philosophy continue in its movement forward, and that's where we're at now. And so for the postmodernists, the world is a Hobbesian battleground of identity groups. They do not communicate with one another because they can't. All there is a struggle for power. And if you're in the predator group, which means you're an oppressor, then you better look out, because you're not exactly welcome. And neither are your ideas. So that's what you're up against. I would say it's time for conservatives to stop apologizing for being conservatives.
That's right.
You don't apologize to these people. That's a big mistake. Apology, they read apology as an admission of guilt. You don't apologize and you don't back down. You young people that are out there who are university.
Did you hear? Conservatives, you cannot apologize. I don't necessarily class myself as a conservative, but I lean toward conservatism because of my faith in the Bible. Not that I'm saying all conservatives are good, and neither am I saying all liberals are bad. But to fight against the spirit of postmodernism, you can see the LGBT movement in that, the pedophilia movement being more sensitive to that and not call it a sin kind of thing. It's all postmodernism. Different reinterpretation of the Bible. There's also been what is called extra school of interpretation that was birthed to kind of like give a much more secular perspective of biblical narratives. So a lot of these concepts also have been adopted in our world, even in our colleges. It's a very dangerous thing, and it's all part of postmodernism. But one thing we cannot do, like he said, you cannot apologize for truth. You cannot apologize. When you're dealing with postmodernism, you have to make a bold stand against the theory, or else it will rob you of your faith. It will rob you of your personhood. It will rob you of your conscience as well. So I get it.
Students, you need to take over the student unions. You need to take them back because they're absolute snake pits, and they have been since the 1990s. With regards to the universities, I thought at one point that the best thing to do would be to cut their funding by 25% and let them fight amongst themselves for the remnants, because it would force the universities to decide exactly what's important and what isn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that. I have to say, majority of what we see happening in our world, the confusion that's happening in our world today, it happens in the school. And if you want to understand why this is taking place, and again, I have spoken about Roman Catholicism theories and doctrines. When you understand the old Roman laws and how it was intertwined with the order of the priesthood, going back into the 6th century, a little bit after Nero, and how Catholicism, how it was birthed. It literally is the papacy is this mixing of Romanism and supposed Christianity. And I say suppose is because there's always been true and honest Christian. The church has always been faithful. But there's also what is known as the visible church and the invisible church. The visible church in the 6th century took the form of Catholicism. The invisible church went into the wilderness. It was hiding from persecution. These were the faithful individuals. They went into France, the Lollards, and many of them were had to hold the Bible dearly from Roman persecution that were connected with the state. So in an effort to actually bring this into our world today, you kind of have to look at the spirit behind Catholicism, because in Catholicism is the seed of postmodernism. So the seed of postmodernism is only going to open the door right back to Catholicism in the near future, where there will be this concept of popery being the overarch, how could I say, the man that is to be looked upon as the one who has all the answers. By the way, this is already happening, because if you look at what happened in 2014 with I think Pope Francis made his way to the joint session of Congress. If you don't understand history, this probably had no significance to you. But for those of us who study Bible prophecy and we study history, we're like, yo, this was a big move, because what was happening here is a country that says republicanism and Protestantism, right? A democratic government where people could choose their leader by voting. The principles of our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the things that we cherish here in this country separate us from the old world, where it was more like a monarchy, kings overseeing the people, right? And here comes a country that says, we the people, right? We elect our leaders. We can voice our opinion. So in a country that has such an opposite perspective and constitution to that of Roman Catholicism, open their door to welcome this man who says, I'm the God of this world. This Jesuit priest. When you study Jesuitism, that's something else as well. Not this bright side today, but the dark side. These Jesuit priests came to educate statesmen on policies concerning climate change, concerning how to help fixing the problems of our world, supposedly the poor and so on. And behind that is this Green New Deal and all these other concepts that goes along with that. And in other words, we are reaping the consequences of these theories, Laudato Si, if you look what that does. So there's like so much happening, but here is what I'm trying to say. Going back to the educational system, the way that postmodernism has become what it is today is because majority of our schools, unfortunately, in some cases even some Christian schools, have been taken over by Roman Catholic theology. It has been taken over by the spirit of Jesuits. And Jesuits, in their overarching goal, you may look at them as a bunch of educators and stuff like that, but the whole purpose is to captivate the mind from school and to teach these individuals, these young children, these adults, and indoctrinate them in Jesuit theology and Jesuit way of thinking, which is really going back to Roman Catholic theory. And this is why you're hearing so many call for changing our capitalism to go more to a globalism means of currency, digital currency, right? It's like another move to say, do away with gold, do away with paper money. Let's just trust in the digital system as a means of making a living. But what does that do? It also give greater control to the government, who later on can use that for their own purpose and controlling, right, of the people's conscience. And this is exactly what the Bible says is gonna happen. So I want to hear the rest of what he has to say here and bring this to a close. I know I'm saying a lot of different things, and if you're not sure what I'm talking about, let me take the time to put that book back on the screen that you need to read. Number one, read your Bible. And number two, read The Great Controversy, because all I'm saying here is gonna walk you through the history all the way to our time. Very powerful, well-written book put together. So let's finish this thing up.
I would say the humanities and much of the social sciences has turned into a postmodern neo-Marxist playground for radicals. The scholarship is terrible. 80% of humanities papers aren't cited once. And so what that means is that they write papers for each other and they sell them to libraries, and that's how the publishers make their money. No one reads them, but the publishers can print them because the libraries have to buy them, and they're buying them with your tax money. And so all of you who are sitting here are funding a postmodern radical neo-Marxist agenda that has its roots in the university, and your tax money is going towards that. And if you want proof of that, you just go online and look at the websites, especially of disciplines like women's studies, which is pathological right to the core. But it's not just women's studies, it's all the ethnic studies groups, it's anthropology, it's sociology, it's social work, and most of all, it's education. And OISE, for example, in Ontario, is perhaps, apart from the Ontario Human Rights Commission, the most dangerous institution in Canada. It should be defunded. It's as simple as that. They don't do the research they purport to do. They're not interested in at all in education. They're interested in the indoctrination of people as young as they can get their hands on, so to speak. Now we need to figure out, our society needs to figure out how to stop shunting public tax money to radical left-wing activists. If we were doing that for radical right-wing activists, there would be an absolute storm. But it's happened incrementally since the 1960s, and it needs to stop. That's partly what the conservatives, not only conservatives, but also liberals, true liberals in the English sense, are up against. I mean, what's happened as a consequence of this postmodern neo-Marxist intellectual invasion is that the center keeps moving. It's moved way to the right now. So if you're a classic liberal, you've become a conservative. And so for all of you who are interested in pursuing the conservative agenda, there's a lot of classic liberals that you could be talking to. And then finally, with regards to talking to young people, you finally have something to sell to them. It's not easy to sell conservatism to young people because they want to change things, and that's not what conservatives want to do. They want to maintain things. Well, now you've got something to sell to young people. You can sell them freedom of speech, and you can sell them responsibility. The left is selling them rights. You can sell them responsibility. And I can tell you, because I've received many letters of the sort that Gad was talking about, young people are absolutely starving for someone to provide them with a sense of responsibility and say, look, here's something worth living for, man. You can find meaning in life with freedom, but freedom is a chaotic sort of meaning, right? And freedom isn't the sort of thing that makes people happy. It's the sort of thing that makes people troubled, because freedom expands your series of choices, and that makes you nervous and uncertain. But responsibility is another, not to say that that's a bad thing, it's a good thing, but it requires that you shoulder the responsibility of the freedom. But responsibility per se is what gives your life meaning, genuine meaning in the face of suffering. And young people they're starving for that. I've been teaching young people for 30 years, and mostly what I've been teaching them about is responsibility.
I zoned in on that very powerful point, right? And we can see the fruit of our youth today not learning the art of responsibility. So we have a bunch of young men who are having children out of wedlock, and as soon as the girl is found out pregnant, they take off. We have a lot of young men who start colleges and not finishing. We have a lot of people who can't hold a job. And part of the reason that this is happening, it all boils down to this spirit of postmodernism. And you may be asking, how is so? Well, in connection to that, we have what is known as the welfare state concept, where the government takes care of me, or I'm entitled to something rather than me being responsible for my own actions, kind of thing. And we see that this is even that theme is also is behind the spirit of the LGBT movement. And what you see happening with this LGBTQI movement is the spirit of, I want more of my rights to be respected. But there's also a level of responsibility that many are shunning. They will go as far as to say, your tax money should be used for my self-perception. Okay, I feel like I'm a woman. I feel like I'm a whatever, right? And I'll need to change my gender or whatever. So in an effort to do that, the spirit of postmodernism motivating the LGBT movement, and they saying, I want my rights to be respected. I want my emotion to be valued. I want my self-perception to not be spoken against. And I want your tax money to help funding whatever sexual change I need to make in my life, because I'm entitled to it. Do you see what happened here? So you strip people of responsibility and you replace them with rights. You replace them with, emotion, lower base passion. What you have is a bunch of people who just like to feel, and they are easily offended. They are always going against anything that may contradict their views. And here goes out the door freedom of speech, out the door freedom of thoughts, out the door healthy and well balanced discussion. We can have none of that because the spirit of postmodernism won't allow it to happen. So do you see what's going on now? Let's bring this to a close.
It's like you're heirs to a great tradition. It's not perfect, obviously, but comparatively, there's nothing else like it that's ever been produced, and it represents a tiny minority of the human polities, most of which are run by murderous, antisocial, psychopathic thugs. And that's seriously. And so what kind of alternative is that? We've got this beacon of freedom and wealth in the West that works, although it doesn't work perfectly. And one of the responsibilities of young people is to find out what's at the core of that, the great core of that, the paramount importance of the individual and the divinity of speech, man. That's something to sell. It's what our whole culture is predicated on.
Jordan Peterson never ceases to amaze me. Not that I'm saying I agree with everything he says, but he is on point well over 90% of the time. When you examine the teaching of the things he's talking about, although he's not going into the historical reasons for these things. I can make the connection from studying these things, but I can honestly say he is on point. Beautiful speech, and it makes a lot of sense. Friends, this is what we're up against, okay? This is what's driving our society, and you need to understand postmodernism. You need to study them carefully. Read your Bible. Read the book, The Great Controversy. I will highly recommend that because most of my understanding came from these two books primarily. Yeah, I am blown away by the content of the message. And if I were to say one last thing, again, these are nothing that should shock any of us. The scripture did say these things were going to take place. It's been prophesied in the Bible. Did you hear what I said? Look what the scripture says. This is Matthew 24. And the question was asked Jesus in Matthew 24 about verse 3. And as he sat up on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately saying, "Tell us, what shall these things be? What shall be what? The sign of thy coming and of the end of the world." So what these guys wanted to know is, what are the sign of your return, and how is this to be coincide with the end of the world? So Jesus went on to speak about many different signs, but I want you to see what he said at the very end here. He gave a parable, which was significant because in the parable is going to make a very serious connection in answer to the question that they asked him. He says, "Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh." So remember the question. When are you coming back? What are the signs predicating that you are coming again? Now, I'm not going into the details, aspects of the signs. I can save that for another discussion. But listen to what he says in verse 33. "So likewise, when you shall see all these things," do we see these things now? Yes, we do. He says, "know that it is near, even at the door." In connection to summer coming, and we see the leaves of the trees are beginning to bud. They are putting forth leaves. So we know that summer is coming because we're emerging from spring into summer. So in essence, Jesus is saying, as you're seeing these signs, as you're seeing our culture, as you're seeing certain things are happening in our world, in connection to what's happening in nature, Jesus says, "Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all be fulfilled." And he says, when you see all these things, know that it is near, referring to his second coming. What? Even at the doors. In other words, Jesus' coming is near. As we are seeing so much changes taking place in our culture, in our society, we can be certain that the Lord is about to come. It says, "This generation shall not pass till all these signs be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away." Here are the next few words. "My words," but what? "But my words shall not pass away." Sorry about that. I think I just smacked the mic a little bit there. Okay, friends, I hope this was a blessing to you. Enough being said. Thank you, Jordan Peterson. I want more of your content. Thank you for that email. I really enjoyed this. And again, by the way, guys, check out more of my content. Check out what we have going on in this channel, the perspective, reaction videos, and many other things that might be served as a blessing to you. Until next time, God bless you. And as always, look unto Jesus Christ and live by faith. Have a good one. Bye.